Hi, friends. It's Jessica, Dr. Berry, if you're fancy. I'm so excited to finally get an opportunity to share my birth story with you. It is my sincere desire and prayer that as I share this most intimate part of my process with having my second daughter, that it can be used to encourage young moms everywhere to use your voice and not allow professionals to dictate to you what you know is best for you and your child. This is not medical advice, and I'm not telling you to disregard what your doctor says. But what I am saying is that as a mom, we know what our bodies are doing, we know what our bodies are saying. And I'm saying to hone in on that and don't be afraid to speak for yourself. All right? So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Let's get to it. So I'll start from the beginning. In 2014 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I was blessed to give birth to my first daughter, and it was a beautiful experience, except for one little thing. I ended up having to have an emergency C-section. Like so many women, it's become a rather common thing. And because I was a first-time mom, I was terrified, had no earthly idea about what I was getting into. So I trusted my doctor, especially after we had had so many conversations about the fact that I wanted to have a natural birth. That was my desire, and that was her desire. Excuse my daughter running in the room. That's mom life for us. But back to the story. 40-week appointment, went in, they didn't see any fetal movement, which made them believe that there may not have been enough fluid in there, and so they were concerned and they wanted to induce me. At that point, I was in labor for about 15 hours before I decided to get an epidural. Got an epidural, they upped the Pitocin. I still didn't dilate, ended up having an emergency C-section. I didn't want it, but it was necessary. And so life goes on. Fast forward 5 years later, and I am in a different place in my life. I'm a professional. I've had one child before. This is baby number two. I've done a lot of research, a lot of reading. This pregnancy was planned, right? So this was a completely different circumstance. So we fast forwarded to this pregnancy. I found out I was pregnant, found out that I was having a little girl again, and truth be told, I wasn't very happy. I was like, oh, I wanted a boy. So I had my little moment about all of that. And then I got past it and just said, I want a healthy baby. But one of the things that was really, really important to me during this pregnancy was that I tried for a VBAC. And so for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a vaginal birth after a cesarean. And apparently, there are some doctors who don't advocate for VBACs for various reasons, and there are some doctors who do. So it was very important to me as I sought health care during this pregnancy that I found a doctor who would support my thoughts and my wishes to have a VBAC. So I found that doctor. She was actually my OBGYN. I love her. She was absolutely amazing, the most supportive. But as we know, in a lot of these practices, there are like 10 physicians. And so when you go in for your doctor's appointments, you're not guaranteed that you're going to see your primary person every time. The rationale that I got was they want you to see as many of the doctors as you can that are in that practice while you're still pregnant so that you can get to know them, at least see their face and be familiar with them. Because if you go into labor spontaneously and you go to the hospital, there's no guarantee that your particular primary doctor is going to be on call and there to deliver your baby, which makes a lot of sense, right? That experience in itself was just seeing different physicians was a little bit stressful. I didn't quite like it. And each time that I went, I tried to find out when my doctor was going to be there so that I could see her. Just because I knew that she completely understood what I was trying to do with this pregnancy. So during this time, I had the opportunity to see various doctors, and I can remember the first white male doctor that I saw. He was very, very nice. I saw him one time, and then I saw him again a couple weeks later. But the way the appointments went, it was over like a holiday break. So there was an extended time between my initial meeting with him and my second meeting with him. Well, the second time that I met with him, it was like I was a brand new patient. He had never seen me before. He was like, "Who are you? Nice to meet you." And I'm just like, I just saw you like a couple weeks ago. Did you not just read the file? But okay, you see a lot of patients. I'm not going to hold that against you. But he was really nice nonetheless. And he asked me a series of questions of like, what took me so long and why hadn't I been in the office? And I explained to him, I've been here. There was a holiday. You guys couldn't get me in. Had to wait till I get an appointment. So that sort of started like this negative feeling that I had in my gut about staying with this practice. And looking back in my mind, I should have left, but it wasn't enough for me to leave. I loved my doctor. So I decided to stay. My next appointment was with a younger female physician, and she was a sweetheart. She listened to me. She clearly read my file before she came in the room with me, which made me happy. She knew that I wanted a VBAC. She expressly stated she's in support of a VBAC. She would do all she could to ensure that that would happen with me. But she also asked me if I understood the risks of having a VBAC. Yes, 100%. The next doctor that I saw was another white male. And this is where things really began to take a turn. This physician came in the room. He had read my file and he says, "How are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm doing well," making small talk. And then the next words out of his mouth were, "Why would you do this to yourself?" And I was at a loss. I was like, you mean like, why would I get pregnant? I'm not understanding your question. He was like, "Why would you want to do a VBAC?" And I explained to him the scenario that happened with my first child and that it was really my desire to have a natural birth. I didn't want a C-section because if anybody's had a C-section, so this is a total left turn, but if you've had a C-section, you know that the recovery after a C-section is horrible. It was for me. I mean, I was in pain. I couldn't walk. I couldn't hold my baby to nurse her like I wanted to. It was just not a pleasant experience. And I didn't want that again, especially after I read so much about women who had a vaginal birth and were able to get back and rebound to their normal life almost immediately. I wanted that. I needed that for the lifestyle that I lead. And so going back to what he said, he questioned why I would want to do a VBAC, and he doesn't like VBACs. I shouldn't do it. And then he proceeded to tell me, he had a patient and she wanted a VBAC and she died and all of these things, trying to scare me really. And I was like, okay. So after he said this, his last question to me before he left the room was, "Did I change your mind?" No, you didn't. If anything, you really made me go hard for what I wanted and what I know was best for me and my lifestyle and my body. And he just wasn't nice. He was pushing on me all hard and just wasn't gentle, didn't really have a lot of care. And his suggestion was, upon leaving the room, was even though I said no, I wasn't convinced that I needed to go ahead and have a scheduled C-section, he said, "You should schedule the C-section anyway." There was a nurse in the room who was always my nurse the entire time. And she was like, "Yeah, let's just go ahead and schedule it anyway, da 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 da." So reluctantly, I listened. I scheduled the C-section, and it was probably about 4 weeks out from that time, and it was about a week post my original delivery date. So it would have been 41 weeks is when they scheduled the C-section, although my doctor had told me that she would allow me to go to 42 weeks. Okay, so here's where the story really gets good. So I'm at this point where it's getting close to 40 weeks. I know what my doctor said, but I also know that they've scheduled this C-section that I just absolutely do not want. And being pregnant, guys, at this point, 8 months pregnant, I was emotional. And so I can just remember one day crying like, this is not what it's supposed to be. This is not what I want. And so I decided to call the doctor's office, speak to the nurse who had scheduled the appointment, and really let them know that I wasn't okay with it. They didn't understand why. They said, well, why would you schedule it if you weren't okay with it? And I was like, I felt pressured. I honestly did. I felt bullied into it by the doctor. And then being that the nurse who was with me all the time said, yeah, let's go ahead and do it, I went ahead, and I wasn't okay. So we scheduled an office appointment with my primary doctor, and she said, you know what? I'm not okay with you going to 42 weeks, but I'm okay with you going to 41 weeks. She said, if you don't go into labor on your own, would you be okay with the C-section after 41 weeks? Said, that's fair. We met in the middle, and we let it stand. So we pushed the C-section date back about 4 days, okay, at this point. So I'm feeling good, going to my appointments, per normal. I met with my doctor and then the other doctor that I really liked. And then I met this older white female physician, and she was rude. She just was rude. She was like, why are you still trying to do a VBAC? You just need to go ahead and schedule a C-section. You're only 1 centimeter dilated. You should be further along. She just had all these like negative, like nagging comments. And I'm in the room like, I should have left this practice. Everything in me told me to leave, and I didn't leave, and I didn't get to see all of the physicians on their roll before I actually went into labor, which made me super nervous for even going into labor. So that was dreadful, but I was at the point now where I couldn't change practices. And so I was just stuck, and I had to go with it. So here's what happened.